Good evening and welcome to the season finale of What's Your Point? I'm Ben Gramato.
And I'm Sam Palicia.
Tonight we will discuss the latest from the NBA and NHL playoffs,
as well as give you our mock drafts for the first 10 picks in the NFL draft. So let's get started.
With the NBA postseason in full swing, we have a lot of heated matchups between Portland and OKC, Philly and Brooklyn, and the Jazz and Rockets. Right now, Sam, who is your top pick for the best matchup in the NBA playoffs?
I think you got to go with Portland versus OKC. I think the matchup between Dame and Russ has been something really special to watch. I think that the way that they've gone at each other has given us kind of edge to this entire series. Yeah, Portland's up 3-1, but it's been somewhat competitive during the series, regardless of the fact how Russ has really shot the ball the last couple games and really shot OKC out of it. I think if OKC could get a win in Game 5, I think that this series will become much more interesting as we go down the line.
To me, the series that I've really enjoyed the most has to be between the Nuggets and Spurs. I know not every game has really been the closest between the scores, but, this is the most back-and-forth series we've seen so far. The only series right now which is guaranteed to go to 6 games. You saw Game 4, which was probably one of the better games of the playoffs, despite the Nuggets winning by double digits. They were down by 12 points after that first quarter before they tied it at halftime and took a 12-point advantage going into that third quarter. The whole DeRozan part of him getting ejected, tensions had really been high between both teams. I think just overall, in terms of basketball, that has been the best series to me.
Yeah, but I think you also have to look at the fact how well Portland has been playing in this series. And they don't even have their starting center, Nurkic, who was a key cog for them this entire season, which helped get them to the number 3 spot. And you got a guy in Enes Kanter who was on OKC, who kind of knows the tendencies that Russell Westbrook has, and even Paul George, who can really combat what Russell Westbrook and Paul George is going to throw at them. But he really isn't going to be able to keep up this entire series, because we've seen time and time again how he really kind of fades away as games get tight.
See, that's the reason I think this hasn't been the top series, is just because of how much Portland has dominated this series. I think, you look at San Antonio, and I enjoy watching Greg Popovich coach in the playoffs. He's such an experienced playoff coach, and it really translates to the way with how they've played in this playoff series.
Definitely. All right, to move on. While there are quality team battles, there's no doubt that the matchup on the court with the most heat is the one between Russell Westbrook and Damian Lillard. Who is getting the best of each other in this series, and who do you think is proving themselves to be the better point guard?
To me, so far, it's really Dame. He's been better than Russ, head and shoulders better than Russell Westbrook. His point guard counterpart of Oklahoma City. Russ, his stats aren't that bad, but if you look at overall team performance, Damian Lillard is doing more for his team. He's a facilitator, and he's really just been an offensive game changer. We've seen all the long three-point shots he's made in the clutch in Game 1 of this series. He's averaging nearly 29 points and 44.5% shooting percentage from the field. He's just been clutch, and on the opposite side of the spectrum, Russ simply hasn't been clutch, and that's why OKC's down 3-1.
I think on the flip side of that, with Russell Westbrook, I think he's been almost averaging a triple-double in this series, just like how he has been for the past 3 seasons. I think if he's able to get his shooting percentage up a little more, he'll be able to help the team. He'll be able to help the team win a game more often than not. Because we've seen over the past 2 years him take less and less shots. His points per game has been going down consistently over the last couple of years with the emergence of Paul George on the team, Steven Adams becoming more of a contributor on the offensive side of the court, but Russell Westbrook is averaging 9.8 assists in this series. He really has been facilitating the offense better than Damian Lillard. I just think that Damian Lillard's shooting prowess over Russell Westbrook has really kind of given him somewhat of an edge, but Russell Westbrook is a career 30% three-point shooter, maybe even less than that. So I think we've already been accustomed to expect from Russell Westbrook.
Yeah, but in today's NBA, the three-point shot is so important. We've seen that, with Golden State becoming such a great three-point shooting team. You really have to make your three-point shots, and that's why, Portland has the edge, and I have to give the edge to Damian Lillard. Russell Westbrook in the final 5 minutes of games, he's been horrible. And you look at that goes back to the 2016 Conference Finals where they blew that 3-1 lead against Golden State. He simply has not been good, and on the other end, Damian Lillard is owning him, and that's why Portland is going to win this series. Moving on to the ice, the NHL has seen the top seed from each conference be knocked out in the first round of the playoffs, but these games has really shown the league has brought a lot of high-quality hockey with them. So is a hunt for the Lord Stanley Cup going to be better without these top-seeded teams from each conference?
I think it will be better because I think the teams that beat them in the Colorado Avalanche and Columbus Blue Jackets, I think they play more of a gritty style of hockey, and that's really what you like to see in the playoffs. Really gritty style of hockey, back and forth movement. Seeing 7 goals a game is great, but I think that the way these two teams have played, they're more fit for the playoffs, and I think that's what we saw in this series so far. Like you've seen teams like the Washington Capitals being the #1 seed going into it and really not living up to standards, and I think we've seen that time and time again in the NHL.
See, I don't think it's a good look to have, the top 2 teams in the NHL be out so early. I know people love the NHL because of parity, but I think it's hard for fans to really invest themselves, especially diehard fans of, say, a team like Tampa Bay, which was so dominant in that regular season, to be bounced in the first round of the playoffs, especially in the way they did. And you look at Calgary, a Canadian team has not won the Stanley Cup since 1993. And, Calgary's drought has gone back to 1989. So for the fans up north, it's really getting more difficult, especially with Winnipeg also being knocked out so early in the playoffs after having such a deep run last year. I think it's not a good look to have, the better teams in the league, especially a Canadian team. Yes, per ratings, the NHL is definitely happy that Tampa Bay, one of the smaller NHL markets in the league, is out. But in terms of overall story, I think, this Tampa Bay Lightning team definitely could have really helped the NHL going forward.
Yeah, but don't you think an even better story could have been, what if Columbus goes on to the Eastern Conference Finals, maybe even the Stanley Cup Finals, and you have the kind of story that goes behind it? They beat the President's Trophy, they beat really the Vegas favorite for the NHL Stanley Cup, and they come out, they sweep them, they move on to the next series. We'll see who they're going to play up against, and maybe they even get to the Stanley Cup Final. I think that creates an even more of an exciting storyline than if you just have kind of what we have going on in the NBA, where Golden State kind of breezing through the entire conference. Okay.
Well, that's all the time we have in this segment, but when we come back, we'll be talking more Stanley Cup playoffs as well as the NFL on the upcoming draft. So stay tuned. You're watching What's Your Point on WTOP 10.
There was an old woman who lived in a shoe. She had so many children, she didn't know what to do. She gave them some broth without any bread and kissed them all soundly.
Lights out. Good night.
And put them to bed. Hunger is a story we can end. End it at feedingamerica.org.
Oh my god, so you'll never believe what happened to Khloe Kardashian this week.
Oh my god, what happened? Tell me.
Okay, so she was at the mall, shopping at Saks.
Oh, hey, didn't see you there.
Hey, we're practicing for our new show, What's the Tea, starring me.
And me.
Hey, Brianna, when does it air?
Every other Sunday at 10 o'clock.
Oh yeah, I almost forgot.
Anyway, I can't wait for you to sip some tea with us.
Only on WTOP.
Can I tell you a cat joke? Just kidding.
Why did the girl ask the mushroom to dance? Because he was a fun guy.
What do you call a pig that knows karate? Pork chop. So how does a tissue dance? Put a little boogie on it.
Opioid dependence can happen after just 5 days. Know the truth, spread the truth.
Welcome back to What's Your Point? We have some more big topics to cover, so let's get to it. The Boston Bruins took their series with Toronto to Game 7 last night. The Maple Leafs are the last remaining Canadian team in the hunt for the Cup. Can the Leafs win and continue the quest and bring the Cup back to Canada? Or does Boston win tomorrow and leave Canadians waiting for yet another season?
I'm picking Toronto to win this series, Sam. They haven't, necessarily been the better team because this series has really been, a dead heat. Both teams have been locked in. It's been, as back and forth as you can get with neither team winning consecutive games in this playoffs. But for me, Toronto has already taken 2 of 3 games in Boston. I know Boston escaped yesterday narrowly in Toronto. One of those late goals came out of an empty netter. But, Brad Marchand is playing out of his mind right now. But outside of that, no one from Boston has really made too big of an impact. And I just think Toronto has way too many talented players. And the way Freddie Anderson is playing in net, I'm picking the Maple Leafs, and I think they have a really good chance to, advance and win the Stanley Cup with the remaining field. We already talked about Calgary and Tampa already being out.
I agree with you with that aspect, but I'm going to go with the more experienced team in the Boston Bruins. I think Brad Marchand has really solidified himself as one of the top 5 players in the entire NHL. David Backes has always been a formidable offensive player, and you have really the experience of the entire Boston Bruins team really backing themselves up against a team that has Austin Matthews, just a young player who's really coming into his own as of late, and a player like John Tavares, who really hasn't seen that much success at the playoff level. So I think that you have to really take that into account discussing these two teams.
Yeah, last season this series did go to 7 games, and with Toronto adding Tavares, I think that's just another element which puts them over the top. But we're moving on. The NBA's top 2 teams in both conferences are on the cusp of moving on in the playoffs. Milwaukee is on the brink of a sweep of Detroit, and the Warriors are looking to close it out against the Clippers. However, 2 teams are playing out of their mind and are looking to knock out the top seeds in the West and East. Houston, with their series against the Jazz, and Boston sweeping the Pacers. With that in mind, which of those 2 teams has a better chance of beating the top seed in the East or West?
I'm going to give it to Boston. I think that they have the most depth in the entire playoffs left. With Gordon Hayward coming off the bench, Jaylen Brown coming off the bench. You see guys like Jason Tatum who have been able to come into their own as of late. Kyrie Irving is an absolute stud. Al Horford has so much playoff experience behind him. It really gives himself a leg up, and easily Brad Stevens is the best coach, arguably in the NBA, but definitely in the Eastern Conference. I think that they have almost every single advantage that you could possibly need in the Eastern Conference, like you've seen with the Cavaliers or really any LeBron James team. They have the advantage at almost every single spot: point guard, shooting guard, small forward, and head coach. I'm going to have to go with Boston.
But you talk about coaching. Mike Budenholzer has really, elevated this Milwaukee team, and they've been the best team in basketball all season, and that hasn't changed the playoffs. But, you look at Golden State. They've struggled against the Clippers. This could be a 2-2 series if it wasn't for Danilo Gallinari, shooting horribly, and he's the Clippers' best player. But you look at Houston right now. They are clicking, and they are firing on all cylinders. The Jazz weren't a shabby team in the regular season. And Houston, they're just running right through Utah right now. To me, it has to be Houston. The way last year's playoff series ended up working out with them going to 7 games and being without Chris Paul, 2 of them, and they aren't going to miss 25 straight 3-pointers again.
Yeah, but you also have to look at the fact that Kyrie Irving is back for Boston. They went 7 games against the Cavs. Okay, moving on. Moving on to the NFL, 2 of the teams that have made the big chances in the offseason are the Bills and the Jets, who are led by second-year quarterbacks looking to build off promising campaigns. With these changes in mind, who will have the stronger second year, Sam Darnold or Josh Allen?
To me, it has to be Josh Allen, and that just is going off of what the Bills were able to do and Brandon Beane in that offseason. I know the Jets added, they added Le'Veon Bell, but the Bills solidified their offensive line, adding Mitch Morse, the most experienced center remaining on the free agent market, and they added, a player they added some depth to that offensive line. Spain from Tennessee, he started 50 games in his career. This guy is an experienced lineman. That's what Josh Allen really needed. And they added, veteran receivers. John Brown was a former 1,000-yard receiver, and Cole Beasley, who has been a monster, in the short yardage game. And those are the 2 biggest, areas of weakness that Josh Allen had last year. But if you watch the end of that year, Josh Allen was arguably the best quarterback in the AFC over the last 5 weeks. He was the best fantasy quarterback over the last 5 weeks.
But Sam Darnold actually did have the better year. From weeks 13 to 17, he was the #1 rated quarterback on Pro Football Focus. They had C.J. Mosley to quarterback the defense with Greg Williams being there. They have Le'Veon Bell to really carry the load. He has a year off after having 407 carries going into the 2018 season. And then you get a guy like Jamison Crowder, who's been a consistent slot receiver in the NFL, one of the most consistent slot receivers in the NFL. He had an insane repertoire that he had with Kirk Cousins when he was back in Washington. So I think that if the Jets are able to really address the offensive line or even address defense, I think that Sam Darnold will have the better year just because he has more talented players around him.
Going from one draft class to another, the NFL Draft is this Thursday at 8 o'clock p.m. Here's our mock draft with who we think goes to what teams in the top 10. Starting with me, I have the Cardinals selecting Kyler Murray with the first pick in the draft. And Sam, this really comes down to, reports going, from Cliff Kingsbury. Today, Todd McShay tweeted that there's a 99.9% chance they take Murray. So I think, that's pretty inevitable. And then number 2, I'm going to take Nick Bosa from Ohio State. He didn't play a lot last year, but, he took half the year off. He will be healthy. The Niners had 7 takeaways, which was the worst in the NFL by far last season. They really need a presence on that defensive line.
All right, for 3 and 4, I'm going to go Quinn Williams going to the New York Jets. I think that he's the best defensive player in the country, maybe even the best player in this draft. If it wasn't for Kyler Murray being the Heisman, I think that Quinn Williams is the number 1 pick, bar none. Going on to the number 4 pick, I have Josh Allen going to the Oakland Raiders. Oakland Raiders have been one of the worst teams in the NFL trying to get sacks.
Definitely, and Tampa Bay definitely could use a linebacker, and I think there isn't a linebacker who's more safe of a pick. There may not be a player more safe of a pick than Devin White, and then the Giants, they definitely need a quarterback. So I think they're going to swing for Dwayne Haskins. He may not be the most pro-ready, but, it's definitely a need.
And for the Jacksonville Jaguars, at the 7th pick, I'm going to give them Jawan Taylor. They're going to need a tackle that could guard Nick Foles after giving him such a hefty contract. And for the Detroit Lions, I'm going to give them Brian Burns. They need an edge rusher after Ziggy Ansah left.
And the Bills are in desperate need of a weapon at the tight end position. T.J. Hawkinson could be the best prospect since Gronk. And for the Broncos, they will take Drew Lock. So that is all the time we have for this segment, but we're going to take a quick time out. But when we come back, we'll be doing our favorite segment, which is the lightning round. You're watching What's Your Point on WTOP 10.
Disaster tips from the objects left behind.
My home wasn't insured, but you can check your insurance policy now to make sure you're covered. Oh.
My savings are lost, but you can put money aside and plan for unexpected disaster costs.
We're lost forever, but you can scan important documents now so they survive.
For more tips on how to prepare, visit ready.gov.
Hi, I'm Zachary Haynes. I'm the new host and producer of the new comedy sketch show, Acting Out, a comedy sketch show by college students for college students. You can check us out here on WTOP every other Sunday this semester on B weekends. Okay, I guess B weekends are down here now in the bottom left corner of your screen. Anyways, we got all sorts of great sketch. Okay, guys, what's going on with the set? What's going?
I got some Oxy after I hurt my neck. First, I took them to feel better. I didn't know they'd be this addictive. I didn't know how far I'd go to get more.
Opioid dependence can happen after just 5 days. Know the truth, spread the truth.
Welcome back to What's Your Point? Up now is the lightning round, and boy, does it go fast. So let's get started. Sam, I'll let you ask the first question.
All right. The Tampa Bay Lightning finished the regular season with the second best record in the NHL history, before being the first President's Cup winner to get swept out of the first round. Head man of the Lightning, John Cooper, attributed the series loss to not playing any meaningful games. since February. Should Tampa look at getting a new coach?
I think Tampa should definitely move on from John Cooper. This is the second year in a row that they've won the President's Cup and they've gotten knocked out of the playoffs. They haven't even made the conference finals in either of those years, which is really telling. You know, the head man of a team like Tampa should really get his team ready for the playoffs. And yes, it comes down to execution. But if you go and look at that series, you know, John Tortorella outcoached Cooper by so much. It wasn't even close. You know, Tortorella proven why he has won Stanley Cups before, and I think Cooper definitely has to go if you're Tampa.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the way Tortorella, but the thing is, Tortorella has so much more experience than Cooper in big games like that. I think that's kind of what played into it, but I agree with you that they should look for a new player.
Moving on, New York Yankees slugger Aaron Judge is the latest Yankee to join a long list of players on the IL after suffering a strained oblique muscle against Kansas City over the weekend. How does the loss of Judge impact the Yankees going forward?
I mean, it kills him, just like how every other injury has killed him going into this season. I mean, Severino's gone, Judge is gone, Stanton's gone, Sanchez. I mean, really, Aaron Boone's going to have to try and figure out a new way to get this lineup going, because with the fact that they got LeMahieu leading off, then Luke Voigt, and you got Brett Gardner playing down lower in the lineup, you're going to have to now move him up into the top 4 spots probably. I think that what's going on with them right now, it sucks and it's really going to hurt, but I think that he's going to have to find a way to fix it.
You know, the Yankees have had 13 players on the IL, which I think is really, you know, telling to just, you know, the overall training staff. And it's just Aaron Boone really has not figured this out, and it's going to be a huge problem because, you know, Tampa Bay's lead in this division is only going to continue to grow after this.
Milwaukee Brewers center fielder Christian Yelich has been on an absolute tear through the first month of the season. That 2018 NL MVP is batting .353 with 13 home runs and 31 RBIs in just 21 games. Is Yelich the best player in baseball?
Christian Yelich is no doubt the best player in the MLB right now. You saw how he ended 2018, you know, the regular season. That last month, I don't think anyone would have picked a player outside of Javi Baez to win the MVP. And just out of nowhere, Yelich came through and just, you know, lit the fire that, you know, propelled the Brewers all the way through the NL championship, where they obviously lost. But this player has been such a key point to the Brew Crew. And you know, his batting average, no one has outplayed him this season.
Yeah, I think definitely this season he has played up to snuff, but if we're talking about the entire league as a whole, if we're counting AL and NL, I think you have to look at Mike Trout. He's been consistently the best player in the MLB for the past 5 seasons, if you're discounting Bryce Harper's one amazing season, but I think that with the way he's able to play defensively, I think you got to look at Mike Trout still.
With the NFL draft set on Thursday, what player do you believe the draft analysts have been giving too much hype in their draft boards and mock drafts?
I think it's Eddie Oliver. Eddie Oliver really hasn't shown that much to me. He plays in the AAC, and the best team there is UFC, University of Central Florida. And I think that with what they've been able to do over the last couple of years, going undefeated twice and not really making a bowl game, I think is something that's remarkable. But he really hasn't had much competition to go off of. And him being so high on draft boards, it really just doesn't make any sense to me.
To me, the most overrated player has to be DK Metcalf. Yes, he put up an amazing combine in terms of numbers, but you look at, you know, the ankle injury, the shoulder injury. Does his route running ability really translate to that of an NFL #1 receiver, which I don't think it does. I don't think he's a top 10 receiver in my mind.
All right, we're going to take a water break, but when we come back, we're going to wrap it up with our hot takes as well as closing out the season. You're watching What's Your Point?
Hey, President Stanley, what's your favorite television station?
I don't know. Hey, guys, what do you think?
My family and friends are always with me, no matter where I may be. Sharing stories from home helps me sustain my recovery from my mental and substance use disorder.
Hi, sweetheart.
Join the Voices for Recovery. Our families, our stories, our recovery.
For confidential information on mental and substance use disorders, including prevention and treatment referral for you or someone you know, call 1-800-662-HELP. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
Good evening and welcome to WTOP 10 Nightly News.
Total, Baldwin faces 32 charges.
Saturday, I went to Woodchuck Saloon.
Too much temperature change.
1310 meteorologist.
2 as well.
Visions from Tanner Spink.
Go to 2 and 1.
2 with 6 and 10 on the year.
It's back and better than ever. One student can win up to $25 in cash. All on Oswego's favorite game show, Spin to Win! Every Sunday night at 9, only on WTOP 10 TV.
Welcome back to What's Your Point on WTOP 10. We have reached everyone's favorite part of the show, and that is a hot take part. With today being the last show of the semester, we have some extra spicy takes for you today. So starting off with mine, my final take of the semester is that the Golden State Warriors will miss the NBA Finals for the first time since the 2014 season. While the Warriors still have the best starting five on paper, they have struggled against a Clippers team that has a massive talent gap between them. Steph shot 3 of 14 yesterday, and the bench just hasn't been that strong overall. This is a weaker bench than Warriors teams in the past. Add in the loss of Boogie Cousins, who hasn't been having the strongest season. And, we just see the growing tensions between this roster that all boils down to the Durant and Green, the argument they had earlier in the season. And then I think, out of the remaining teams, a lot of them, pose a huge threat to them. And we talked about Portland earlier. I think if Portland is on their game, they can beat the Golden State Warriors. And I think, we talked about how Houston had that massive flop last year to end the postseason when they should have been the team representing the West in the NBA Finals. I don't think they're going to miss 25 straight three-pointers again, especially, with the addition of players like Austin Rivers, and they still have Eric Gordon, PJ Tucker. This team will not shoot like that again, and I don't think Chris Paul will be hurt again because he really is a huge part for this team.
Definitely, I agree. My hot take of the night is that the Philadelphia 76ers will blow their 3-1 lead against the Brooklyn Nets. Let's face it, Joel Embiid is not fully healthy, and Ben Simmons is not consistent enough to be a solid pass and shoot player. I also believe that they don't have enough outside shooting to keep up with the Nets. And I think that going into the fact that how successful Jared Allen was in the paint at the beginning of Game 3 with Joel Embiid not being there, if Joel Embiid has even a hiccup going into the next game, and he's not able to play for the rest of the series, I think that it's really going to be a detriment to the Philadelphia 76ers. Add on to the tension between Jimmy Butler and Jared Dudley, like we just saw on the screen. If they end up getting suspended for another game in this series because of what's been going on with them, I think that it'll be tough for the 76ers to continue coming out of it, because with Jimmy Butler being one of their better three-point shooters behind J.J. Redick and Tobias Harris. And really, Tobias really hasn't shown what he was doing in Los Angeles with the Clippers, which maybe that's because of the lack of touches. But regardless of the fact, he needs to be able to play better. J.J. Redick, we know how old he is. He's been in the league for a while now. I think that Ben Simmons really needs to be able to develop a consistent jump shot before the Sixers can be considered title contenders.
The thing is, to me, I just think they possess too much talent, outside of Embiid. Even without Embiid, they're better than Brooklyn on paper. They haven't really put it all together, but I think, it's just one more game. They can win it. Well, that is all the time we have for tonight. Next season, we're going to change some things up, and one of which will be a new co-host, as Sam will be graduating in just a few weeks. So on that note, I will let you close out the show tonight.
Thanks, Ben. For What's Your Point, I'm Sam Palicia.
And I'm Ben Gramado. We will see you next season, where we will be bringing you more hot takes and more of the best debate in sports. And Sam, just on one note, I really want to thank you for being my co-host. I had a lot of fun with you debating.
Thanks, man.
And good luck with everything going forward. It's really been a fun show, and I wish you the best of luck. And to our viewers, thank you for watching us this season. And thank you again. This has been What's Your Point for Ben Gramado and Sam Palicia. Have a good night.